everybody. I am here at a very windy Oak Lane Cemetery. We are just off of 480th Street, which is just west from Highway 218. So we're back up in the kind of northwest corner of Mitchell County. And this won't be a terribly long video today because it is so windy, and I know the sound will be a little bit difficult. But I wanted to take a moment to share one of the more unique places for Mitchell County. So this is a cemetery. There are people that have been buried here, but the reason that it falls under at least current Mitchell County maintenance is because cemeteries like this, which are often referred to as pioneer cemeteries, are some of the very few places that we can find remnant prairie. So not prairie that's been restored, but original prairie that really, for the most part, the only part that has been dug up was for digging a gravestone. And so I'm gonna flip the screen here, and you can see that we do have some prairie. We do maintain and mow a portion near the headstones just for access to the stones. And there's original prairie on both sides of this plot of land. So it may seem a little odd to be in a cemetery today, but history of the land and how it's been used is really important for our story here in Mitchell County, an important story for Mitchell County Conservation Board to tell. And these unique places where there is a personal, very almost sacred story to tell are really interesting. So in Victorian times, it was actually a popular thing to go to cemeteries and have a picnic. That's why most cemeteries are very park-like. They have big beautiful trees and flowering plants and benches and things to sit on, because it was a popular picnicking location for families to go to before we have like our city parks and things with playgrounds now. So, and it was a place to go, have a connection with your ancestors. And one of the things I find most fascinating, even though I don't have a personal history with the people that are here, is learning their stories, even with the little bit of information that we can gather from their headstones. So I actually got to take a class on the iconography, or like what do the symbols mean on headstones, and they're really quite interesting. You can learn a lot about the people based on the symbols chosen on their headstones, and also just some of the dates we can kind of link to significant historical events. You can also sometimes tell if it's maybe a child or a woman that was that died in childbirth based on the ages as well. So I'm going to take you around to some of the headstones, show you some of the stories that I can interpret from the stones and what they mean. Like many old headstones in Iowa, they are weathered and some of them are difficult to read. I'll show you a few tricks on how to maybe extract some information, even if we can't just read it from the stone itself. And just walking around as I first got here, even though there's not very many stones here, they are interesting different languages that are written on the stones. And if anybody can tell me what they are, that would be great. So I'm going to flip around and show you some of the prairie area first, and then we'll move over to the headstones and some of the different meanings of the symbols there. Let's see if I can get my camera flipped here. There it is. So we have on the north side, which is where I'm standing now to block a little bit of the wind, some of these spruce trees and a few other trees. Looks like maybe a cherry here. And so I'm going to use that to my advantage as much as I can. But on the west side, it was scheduled this year to do a burn on this prairie. And on the east side, it was not. We usually typically have our burns scheduled on a 2 or 3 year rotation. So next year that side could get burnt, or we might not do any burning at this location next year. And the burning helps maintain the prairie area for native vegetation, gets the weeds out, burns out the trees, so it stays prairie. And prairie time for really showing off is more in the mid to later summer. So we don't have a lot happening, although you can see how green the burn area has become, and a lot of new growth. A lot of those vitamins and nutrients from the dead growth have now gone back into the soil to help this new spring growth really take off. So I'm gonna wander through some of the headstones here, and I hope the sound comes through okay. I'll try to use my body as best I can to block the wind, but it is very windy out here on the prairie today. So and if any of you have any stories of the people that may be here, that would be great to share or to know, that we can record for information for this area. Like I said, I don't have any personal connection, but I find cemeteries really interesting places to go visit and just look at the stones and try to learn about the stories of the people that are there and imagine kind of what their life was like. So I'm gonna head over to some of the closest stones here and talk a little bit about what I know from what I can read and see on the headstones still remaining. And on some of these you may notice what would be the north and the northwest corners of the stones are much more weathered than maybe another part, and that's primarily because our main winter storm weather and our main really heavy summer storm weather comes from the northwest. That's why we put a lot of our windbreaks on the northwest corners of our property. So they've just received a little bit more weathering than some of the other parts of the headstone. So I wanted to head over to this one first because it's fairly clear still. And like I said, I got to take a class on what some of the different symbols mean and why they may have included the symbols they did. So this is one of the stones that has some kind of scripture or saying or poem perhaps written at the bottom, and it is not in English. I'm assuming it's maybe a German saying, so if anybody can speak German and would want to help me out, that would be awesome. And just based on their names too, I'm assuming maybe German, but it could be another background as well. So looking at this stone here, it's pretty clear to see the two doves flying and the hands that are clasped. And if you look at the hands, they're clasped together. There's not a finger pointing, which we'll see one a little bit here that has a finger pointing. And the best way to interpret that is depending on the clothing style, and it you can't quite tell here, but the clothing, or like the cuffs of the clothing, look like it may be the same type of clothing. So that could be a symbol of a family member, like brothers or very good friends. If it was male clothing or male cuff on the sleeve and kind of more ruffly on the other sleeve, it would be a husband and wife clasped in marriage. And typically if there's a finger, it indicates that is the person pointing that is on the headstone, but the person who is not pointing is the one that is actually passed away. So I can't tell maybe just two family members, but they both lived fairly long, so 18 teens into the 1880s, which is pretty awesome for that time period. They didn't have any major diseases or illnesses, so they got to enjoy a pretty long life there. And the doves, pretty ubiquitous across the board as far as what doves mean. So they're a symbol of peace, innocence, maybe a spirit flying off to heaven, those types of things. So, and I thought that another interesting feature was this infinity symbol here. So that almost makes me think that this is a married couple here. You can tell on the clothing if it's, you know, a ruffly sleeve versus a more manly looking cuff. So like I said, if anybody does have some stories or information on the people here, that would be great. So this one, there are quite a few stones in many of the cemeteries around that have these very realistic tree looking stones. And some of them may actually just be a trunk of the tree. I've seen them with oak leaves and squirrels and acorns. A lot of times it is more of an oak type looking tree. And this is indicating that this person was a member of the Woodsmen of the World fraternal group. And they helped provide headstones for people that were members of this club. So, again, this person was lucky for the time period. See, we have 1843 to 1901. So again, fairly long life for this gentleman here, which is nice to see. I was just checking to see if there was anything on the background to help us out. But I've always really liked seeing these very detailed, very realistic tree headstones. And you can look up the Woodsmen of the World group if you want to find out more about what they did. So a lot of headstones for the early settlement time, at least for Mitchell County, were pretty limited. They were limestone, or sometimes you would be able to get things like, this looks more like granite type stone, which weathers a little bit better. So some of the headstones over here are very difficult to read. They're prone to breaking a little bit more than some others. One of the things that is kind of fun to try, if you can't see the writing very well, I'll show you two different ones after we look over here. So there's different styles of headstones. Some of them are just your basic slabs. Some of them are like this one where it's more of a pillar. And it kind of indicates what time period the person was living in, kind of what was popular for styles. Again, a different language here. So, born and died, but not in English. There, and there's some more wording on this portion that is not in English. Again, perhaps German, maybe Norwegian. March 1862 to November 1888. So this is a younger person, their 20s, that passed away. Could be from disease or an injury. A lot of the people here so far are born mid 1800s and passed away late 1800s or early 1900s. So seeing there's some notable names over on this one. So here we have a small child who lived about a month, born in the winter time in the 1880s. Several young people here. It's always a little sad to see over to this headstone yet to see if I can read anything. Weathered from this side. We'll check it out. Oh, okay. So here, I'm going to try a few tricks on this one to help bring out what I see. I can't make out a lot of the writing. It looks like a date of 1882 or 3 perhaps, and then a death date of 1890. But up here is really what I wanted to show you and talk about. So I'll talk about it now, but I'll try to do a few tricks, like I said, to bring out a little bit more detail on this stone. And none of these are invasive or damaging to the stone in any way. We don't want to desecrate the stone. I know nature is doing that on its own, but we want to be respectful of the headstones that are here still. So what I see looking at this one, I'll try to make out the dates with some of the tricks. But on top here is a weeping willow tree. So here's the trunk, the base, the roots, the trunk, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kind of weeping willow branches, which, as the name indicates, weeping willow is mourning. So this person is being mourned. And if those dates are correct, this is again a younger child, from what I can read, perhaps maybe in their around 8 to 10 years old. So I'll see what I can do to bring it out. So what I brought with me is 2 different methods that you can use to try to make the information pop on some of these headstones. And I'll try to do the best I can, and I'm sorry if the wind is affecting the sound. But I brought with me just a plain white piece of paper. Rubbing, like you would make maybe a leaf rubbing, perhaps, if you've done those. So I'm hoping that by putting the paper down and then rubbing the crayon over top, that any raised portions will show up, leaving the depressed portions, which is actually the writing, blank. And so we may be able to read a little bit more of the script on here. And whether this one is in English or not, I can't quite tell. I can kind of read looking up close. It looks like the name of Edwin. But I'm assuming many of these are early settlers to this particular area of Mitchell County. So I've got to finish scraping off a little bit of paper here. So I have done a few with some of my programs like this with some of my care facilities, and we visited a few cemeteries, one of them being by Pioneer Park, and it was really fascinating because one of the headstones there had a date in the 1700s as being born, so it was a very early settler to Mitchell County. I don't remember where that person was from or where they, were born, but it was 1700s. So that's one of the oldest ones that I know of in the area. And again, just learning about some of the architecture and the symbology on these headstones is really kind of fascinating. It's amazing the type of information you can gain. A lot of times, even now, we put a symbol of a profession on the headstone, or a hobby on the headstones as well, just to kind of give us a little bit of information about the life of that person. So I'm going to, so I have my paper here, and I'm going to try to get some of these dates so we maybe have a little bit better idea of what age this person was. And I'm going to rub it with my crayon, and unfortunately it's just me today, so I need both of my hands to do this. I'll try to face it up so at least you can kind of see what I'm up to. See if I can get it to sit. Somewhat okay? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, to help things clear up. The lichen that starts to grow on these headstones can cause that to not show up quite as well. All right, I got enough to help me out. So this is a child's headstone, hence the weeping willow tree. And it actually shows up better on the screen here than it does just looking at it in person. So we can see January 1883 to September 1890. So this child was 7 years old. Hence the mourning over the weeping willow tree. A little bit more symbolic of a child. Often children's headstones will have a lamb or sheep on it as well. The other method that I wanted to show you, actually, I have to go grab it out of my car, is to use shaving cream. And it does kind of the same thing as using the crayon. So what you do is you would take your shaving cream, and like I said, I do have some with me. You take the shaving cream and put it on the headstone, and then use a piece of cardboard, or if you have a squeegee, that's great, and you'd scrape down all the way, and the surface, any flat portions, you would scrape the shaving cream away, and then the shaving cream would sit in the depression. So just like the crayons, it would help bring out that 1883, that date there, and it doesn't harm the headstone. It actually would, come off with any rain, and if anything, may clean very, very little, but it is definitely not damaging to that headstone in any way. So if you don't have a paper and crayon with you, but you're carrying around a can of shaving cream, it's really kind of interesting to see, and it helps bring out some of that detail. There are some groups or organizations that have started to offer a service, a training, and then people do provide a service of cleaning headstones. I don't know of any around here, so if anybody does know of anyone, it's kind of a service, not just because you're providing a service, but you're almost doing a service to these people by bringing their story, what we can read on their headstone, back to life again. So it's really interesting, like I said, to visit these cemeteries and see who's here, and try to learn their stories, and make sure that they're not forgotten. So, and if anybody does, like I said, have any family here, or know anybody, or know one of these stories of the people here at Oak Plain Cemetery, I would be interested to hear them, and perhaps we can record some more information to put at this location. So I'm going to move over to a few of our last headstones here. Like I said, this video is not going to be quite as long just because of the wind, and it seems like several of you can hear me okay. Nobody's said anything yet, but if you can't, I'm trying to use my body as much to block the wind as I can. So there are a few more headstones here. There are others. Some of them are almost unreadable completely, and there are a few that are broken, but there is some information I wanted to show on them as well. So I'm going to pick up my crayon and my stuff here, and head over to these last couple headstones. One of the tools I used was from a conference I went to. That was a national conference, and it was a interpreting cemeteries class or session, and we were given a book. It's from the presenter was from Texas, but it's a great tool for taking. It's like an ID guide, like any of my others, like for plants or trees or birds. It's just another ID guide, and it's really a great tool to start figuring out what some of the symbols mean in the different styles. So it has pictures and examples of styles of headstones, and if there are objects that are shown on the headstones and what they mean. So that's where I got a lot of my information. Once I get done with the video, I will post, I have a Pioneers and Prairies PowerPoint, and I will provide access to that. I talk about prairies and prairie remnants, and that cemeteries are some of the best places to find those original tiny little scraps of prairie, not restored prairie. And I do talk about some of the symbology on the headstones as well. So it's a little bit of plants, a little bit of symbols, and all based on the unique location of these pioneer cemeteries. So we'll go sneak a peek at these last couple headstones, and we'll finish up this mini live today. I think it's neat too. So some people get creeped out by it, but I think it's fascinating. So thanks for sharing that. Now this is one of those headstones that you can see just based on the writing here. This is the northwest corner of the headstone. Very worn, and as it starts to get to the south side of the headstone, we can start to see some more of the writing. And if I were to guess, I haven't looked. Nope, the south side, that must be from the summertime winds. So we've got a little bit of writing here on the southwest corner. And that looks to be about what we can decipher from here. There is a very old headstone laying at the base. I can read 1878 and a little bit of the names. The names are always interesting too. Some names we don't always hear anymore. First names. So we've got 1832 to 1881. So an older person for this headstone here. I can't make out much for symbology. There is a little bit of almost, I would call it like a Greek scroll here that moves kind of back and forth all the way around the base of this upper portion. But that's about what I can decipher from this monument. It's fairly large. So it could indicate, especially with these smaller stones here, that it's a family plot. So this would be for the main portion of the family. So maybe a founding father, a grandfather of the family for the area. And then the smaller stones around would be other family members that would be. I see a little bit more. So we have, it's a Rustad printing. We can read that here with a little bit of scroll work. And there's some more decoration on this portion. But a little bit difficult to make out some of it there. You can see some of the detail on this side a little bit more. I knew DODE was, died, but I wasn't sure which language. So if anybody can help with that. And it has the two little ellipses on top, which is a indication of, I know that's used in German language, so. Mike, yeah, Cemeteries, I drugged my husband on a cemetery walk one day and he thought I was crazy. But we spent probably 3 hours. We didn't know anybody in that cemetery, but again, we were just wandering and trying to read stories. So here is, again, that hand symbol like I talked about before. I'll try to block the wind a little bit, but this is a different one. So we can't make out much on the stone itself, but we can tell a little bit about what's happening here just based on this actually quite clear hand symbol on top. So it's a clasped hand. On the left, we have a man's cuff, style cuff, and on the right, we have a woman's style cuff. And so this is a married couple here. And if you can see, the hand that's on the right has a finger pointing down. So this would indicate that the husband died first, and the wife is pointing to the name. So she, at least at the time of the headstone, the time that they put the headstone up, she was still alive. But that it was a married couple that was married here. It looks like there is a scroll there. It could have some Greek symbols, which indicates, a religious background. There are several different just symbols. It could also have the names on there. I can't quite make out enough to tell you for sure. This is another one with a hand clasp, but it's a slightly different angle. So I'll try to point it out. I'm really quite amazed how sometimes it shows up better on the camera than I can see in person. But we have a hand reaching down here and then a hand from the side. And I can't tell for sure, but a lot of times if it's a hand reaching from above, it can be interpreted or sort of read as maybe a hand of God coming down and reaching for this person to take them to heaven, which just based on, since we just saw one very similar, they were across from each other, they were equal, whereas this one has more of an upward angle reaching down for the person. So whether it's a single person here or a couple or even a family plot, I can't tell, but the symbol is a little bit different. Just checking on the back sides to make sure I'm not missing out on anything. And one more here. So this one, we just saw it over on the other headstone, is another weeping willow tree. So I can't really make out the dates. This one would maybe be a candidate for the squeegee and shaving cream method. It is quite worn, but we can see the roots of that willow tree here, and then the branches of that weeping willow tree. So just based on the frequency of the use of that symbol, I would guess it was maybe another child at this one. I can make out some 8s here, so 1880 something, but the actual dates I can't quite see. And it looks like there is perhaps up above here some type of foliage again. So we have the weeping willow tree, but some type of decoration. And if it's foliage, each plant, kind of like we use plants now, like different colors of flowers mean different things. If you go to a florist shop, they can help you pick it out if you want to talk about, send a flower of friendship or love or sympathy. What different colors mean and different plants mean. I can't quite tell. It almost looks like an olive branch crossed at the top there, which would be indicating peace for this person. And maybe peace for the family as well. So, with that, I wanted to kind of finish up this live today. It's not quite as long as the other day. And we're going to, again, try to continue these lives every Wednesday. And we're also going to be posting some videos on Fridays of more of a fact-based or subject-based that maybe is a little bit shorter, not a live video. So again, this is Oak Lane Cemetery. I'm on the back side of the archway here, but just off of 480th, and Highway 218 is just off to the east here. So not hard to find if you wanted to come check it out for yourself. And there are other older cemeteries, not necessarily managed by Mitchell County, but if you wanted to check out some of your local cemeteries with the information from today, or if you have questions about what certain symbols mean, send me a picture and I can try to help you out. It's a great way to actually help kids learn about some history. So like I said, based on the dates, birth and death dates, we can tell how old the person was, if it was a child, maybe a young woman that died in childbirth, or depending on if there are a lot of stones with a certain death date, they can actually show us if there was some kind of epidemic that came through the area. So 19 teens was the Spanish flu, which has been brought up a little bit in our modern times with our situation today. So we can learn a lot from studying history, even if it's walking through an old pioneer cemetery. So if you have any questions, like I said, you can contact me. My email is Chelsea, CHELSEA, @osage.net, or you can call my cell phone, 641-330-0765, or message me on our Mitchell County Conservation Board Facebook page. So I'm happy to answer any questions about cemeteries, at least to the best of my knowledge, and also about prairies. Like I said, there's not a lot happening in the prairie right at the moment, but later summer it'll really start to shine. There's some great seed head plants that I can just see right now. Some milkweeds, some cornflowers. There's some really nice flowers here throughout the summer. So come back and visit once the flowers are blooming. Until then, I will see you guys again next week for a Facebook Live, and also the wildflower walk is now going to be a virtual walk, so I will have some information on the woodland wildflowers that a lot of people have been out and about taking pictures of lately. So yeah, so it's quite windy out here, so if you want to come visit 40th and 218, and let me know what you guys think and what you find. So we'll talk to you next Wednesday, if not on any messages before then. So thanks a lot for tuning in today, guys.